Look, we just hit 20,000 miles and we're out here in the lava fields of Sisters, Oregon. Nice. 20,000 miles on my 2019 CRF450L. 22,000 miles actually. And in that time, it has run just about flawlessly. I had an issue with the stator where I burnt out the stator. Totally my fault. And if you want to see more about that, just look back in the videos. I don't know. It's in there somewhere. You guys will figure it out. You're pretty smart. I had a little issue for a while where the starter would click like the solenoid was going out, but it wasn't engaging, or I'm not real sure what happened. It had happened maybe half a dozen times, and then it went away and it hasn't come back, which drives me a little crazy because I hate problems that I haven't diagnosed, I haven't figured out what they are, just in case they do come back. But other than those two things, again, all the Honda parts have run flawlessly. I've had some issues with some aftermarket stuff, but nothing major. The first actual valve shim exchange I had to do was at 21,000 miles. If you go back and watch my videos, you'll see I did one just to show everybody how to do it, but it didn't actually need to be done. And at 21,000 miles, I want to say it was an exhaust went out just a little bit, not by much, but enough that, you know, while I was in there, I changed it out. But for the people asking the questions, how often do you have to do the actual shimming of the valves? There you go. My first one that had to be done was about 21,000 miles. I asked you all, well, last year sometime, probably when I was on the Washington BDR, what questions did you have? What did you want to know? Because if you go back to all my other reviews of the bike, all the, the 10,000, 16,000, whatever the mileage is, the bike has pretty much run the same the whole time. I don't have anything to add to it other than if you get this bike, your mechanic is going to be very, very sad and you're going to be very, very happy. So I asked you guys, what do you guys want to know? And I have a list of some of the questions or some of the things you wanted covered. First one was, what do you need to do to the bike? You don't need to do anything, but there's a couple things you're going to want to think about doing. The first one is changing out the ECU for something that runs a lot richer and gets you all your horsepower back, or not, probably not all your horsepower, but a bunch of your horsepower back. You're going to want a lighter exhaust than the catted Honda one. It's going to be louder, and I'm not a big fan of super loud bikes, especially on adventure rides when, trying to stealth through wherever. But it's 7 pounds difference between the stock one and like the Yosh, the Graves, FMF, whichever one. As far as which one you use, totally doesn't matter. I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of benefit out of a complete system. So a slip-on for the money is probably the best way to go, the most bang for your buck. Another thing I think everybody should do, whether you do anything else, you should get the throttle tamer on this bike. A lot of fuel-injected bikes suffer from the on response of the throttle in that first couple degrees of turn. The Honda seems to be very, very susceptible to it, although they claim they fixed that in 2021, 22. I'm still hearing that it's still a thing. So get a throttle tamer, put that on, and then learn how to use your throttle. It's going to be different. A lot of people are coming to this bike from other dirt bikes or from the road, and you might be coming from a heavy bike with a big motor, or you might be coming from a dirt bike with a carburetor, and all those things lend themselves to kind of a soft hit when you crack the throttle open. Super light motor, super light piston, revs really fast on a bike that weighs nothing and has very little reciprocating mass. makes this kind of a hard hit, kind of a bang when you hit it. So get the throttle tamer. That'll make life much, much easier for you. The other thing the bike definitely needs is new tires. The stock ones are okay on the street. They're so in the dirt. They're more like hard terrain tires. I didn't like them at all. I couldn't wait till they fell apart, and it didn't take them too long. And then I went with Motaz Ral Z's for 75% of the life of this bike. I've had their Desert HTs. I've tried some hybrid trials tires, which I really, really like. The hybrid trials tires, the new ones, work amazingly well on almost anything. Mud, not so much, right? Anything that they're going to get packed up, loamy stuff, but hard pack, rocks, and they work really, really surprisingly well in snow and sand, where they tend to float and actually get some pretty good traction. But besides all that, you're going to want to get a new set of tires, whatever those are, whether they're Motaz or Dunlops or whatever you want. You're going to have a lot more fun once you get some actual knobbies on this thing. Now, talking about knobbies and DOT tires, all the mods that I've done to this bike, with the exception of like the ECU and the throttle tamer and taking some weight off, but all the mods I've done have been to make this a better road bike, because most of my trips have been adventure trips where it's going to be some road miles and a lot of long, not necessarily technical trails, but double track and Jeep roads and the big gravel roads out in the middle of nowhere. So everything I've done to this bike has just been done to make it travel better. The Rebel X fairing, and well, especially the Rebel X fairing, and then to help it carry some weight, and then a heavier spring in the back. So understand when I'm doing the review of this bike and the 20,000 miles, those are not 22,000 miles of just dirt. And I've ridden this as a dirt bike in Moab and around here in Colorado, but I've also ridden it as a straight up adventure bike coming back from the Oregon coast to Colorado, all on the highway. So I've run this bike through just about every type of terrain you could run it through. And as a dirt bike, you don't need to do anything to it. This is a fantastic dirt bike. A little heavier, right, than the R, but it's still a fantastic dirt bike. And what I've found in motorcycles, and think about this as motorcycles in general, the first thing people tend to do is set up the suspension for the way they're going to ride the bike. And that is like the number one thing that'll determine whether or not the bike handles the way you want it to in the terrain you're trying to ride in. The Tenere, the T7, right, is a great example. Everybody loves that bike, but it's got a junk suspension. So everybody's spending $3,000 on the suspension. Or the old KLR guys, you got to put some money in the suspension or you're just going to be miserable. This bike, out of the box, the suspension, while stiff, is, in my opinion, fantastic. It is a little stiff, but again, I ride this as an adventure bike. So once I throw some extra weight on it, and I might have gained a couple pounds over the years, it settles right down. The suspension is super planted. Out on the street, I think this is a great streetable bike, especially with the stiffer suspension. But then you throw knobbies on it, it gets all squirrely again. So, anyways, all the mods I've done to this bike have been to make it a better street bike because it's already a fantastic dirt bike. So as you go through the videos and whatnot, watching what I'm doing, what I'm adding, just keep that in mind. Scott's damper doesn't really need that until you're out on the highway doing 70 miles an hour. Obviously, the fairing, you definitely do not need that to go ride around in the sand. And I have a recluse auto clutch on this. It just makes it easier to maneuver when I've got a ton of weight and I'm trying to do technical stuff on some BDR somewhere. And I've got bags piled all over this thing. So let's see, what was the other questions? The last question I'm going to answer before I let you guys get out of here. Everybody asked me, and I don't know why, what other bikes had I considered other than the Honda. And I think I've covered this in a couple other videos, but I'll kind of condense it here. I thought about the Huskies and the KTMs, you know, the 500 EXE range or the 701 long range, which is still a really good bike. But when I looked at it, the reliability of a KTM is always questionable until you've got a couple thousand miles and you've broken whatever's going to break on those things. And the Honda, again, day one, ran great. The other thing that a lot of the 500s and the 450s, especially KTM, because they're going for super lightweight, their frame will actually stop right about here, and then everything's plastic from here back. So they tend to wobble. And when I put my luggage on here, my luggage sits on the tail rack. And there's a video of me standing on this thing. This thing can take an awful lot of weight, despite what Honda tells you the weight limit on this bike is. So those are a couple bikes that I had considered instead of the CRF450. Well, now it's the RL. But again, I was going for longevity, reliability, a stable platform from which to mount all kinds of stuff, and Honda just ticked all those boxes. Much better than the KTM. Now, if you guys know me, you know I own two other KTMs, and I love those bikes for what they are and for what they can do. But for the unicorn ultralight adventure bike build, I think, in my opinion, this is the bike that you start with. So there we go. There's my 20,000 mile, really boring, broken record review. It's a Honda. It is a classic Honda. It just keeps running. It just keeps working. Okay. If you guys have any more questions, as always, hit me up in the comments below, and down below in the comment section, there's a list of everything that's actually on the bike right now. If it's up to date, I don't know. We'll find out. So if you have any questions on what I'm riding around with, look down there. Yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you guys out there sometime.